Hello, guys. How's it going? Back with episode 19 of the Glue Guys podcast. I think my camera's still focusing, but we're just gonna ride until it does. As Chad eloquently put before the recording started, the Johnny Unitas episode. He also said he had some other legends that this episode could also be called. Why don't you give us a couple, Chad?
Yeah, just real quick before I do that though, camera quality, it doesn't matter because no one's tuning into these videos to see what we look like. They're just tuning in for the quality content that we're providing when it comes to sports on a week in, week out basis. Some other legends to wear the 19 shirt though, Real Madrid specifically, Luka Modric, who then passed it on to Danny Ceballos, who's currently wearing the shirt, has actually been a decent servant to the club the last 2.5 years, starting some games at the number 8 position for us. So, and as we talked about before we started recording, a guy who links both of our clubs, the only guy, one of the few guys to play for both of ours. Weirdly, a lot of attacking midfielders, or creative midfielders at least. Mesut Ozil, of course, Odegaard right now. So maybe that's the link between Real Madrid and Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Ceballos that year on loan, he would nick the 8 shirt, and I really hoped that we were going to sign him permanently once he scored that winner against Sheffield United in the FA Cup quarterfinal. On the way to us not winning that FA Cup, because I know Arteta's never done anything meaningful in his managerial career, but I know you have that CV of Klopp with you at all times. So
yeah, well, that's the thing is. You talk about the FA Cup, which is a trophy that doesn't matter until Liverpool win it, or really even just get to the final. Because somehow that was when you knew they were peak. Like I don't know how I could do a full solo hour on like Liverpool media coverage, or really I would just want to go team by team in the media coverage of all of them.
I'm so down.
Liverpool is just especially unique to me because they get a pass because they sign guys for $80 million instead of 120. So it's like, oh my God, they're working with so much less. It's like, dude, Nunez wasn't cheap, right? He just sucks. And Van Dijk was the most expensive signing at his position when it happened. And then it's not like Naby Keita was cheap either, and a whole bunch of other.
Well, he did well at least at the club.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So. But hey, I don't want to do that today. We're recording this 2 days before Christmas, so I want to be in a good mood, be in a good spirit.
Yeah, let's be cheerful. One thing to be cheerful about, or not, depending on who your favorite team is the college football playoff. Something new, obviously, for this season. 12-team playoff for the first time. They had the 4-year playoff or 14 playoff for I think it was exactly a decade. I think the last BCS national championship game was in 2014, or maybe the first playoff was in 2014. Either way, one of the two.
Yeah, first playoff was in that 2014-2015 season.
Yeah, so I think it was around for about a decade. Now we have the 12-team playoff, and Chad kind of wanted to, which I was shocked by, that he sent me this text during the week that he wanted to talk about college football because LSU wasn't in the playoff, so I didn't really know what interests he had. But Chad, why don't you run us through a couple of things and kind of tell us why you wanted to open up with this segment.
Absolutely. And I will give myself a bit of credit. I actually watched at least a quarter of 2 of the playoff games. So, I'm not sitting here asking for an A+, but I watched the entire first half of Ohio State, Tennessee. And then as I was telling Ethan, I would have watched more of Penn State, SMU, but, I don't have time to watch good college football, much less a 3-touchdown game in the first quarter. So that one was about a quarter's worth of
if I'm not mistaken, Brody scored 2 or threw 2 pick sixes in the first half, right?
Yeah,
or was it in the first
exactly.
quarter?
First quarter. So that's the thing. When that happens, it's like, okay. And it was a bad weekend for the ACC. Although I will say Clemson was, funnily enough, the only team was in the closest game of all of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to talk about that for a second, but yeah, I did get to watch a bit of it, so of course, naturally, I have some thoughts. And the first one I want to roll right into is kind of what I was just talking about. We made this whole big deal about, oh my God, 12 teams, everybody gets a chance, everybody, all these teams that were never in contention or never even thought about, in the 14 playoff. There was no chance SMU would have ever gotten in, or Indiana. I'm trying to think of, Boise State.
Even this Clemson team would have never gotten
exactly.
a chance, or Arizona State.
Obviously, it's easy to say, hey, guess what? Any team ranked 5 or below wouldn't have gotten in a 14 playoff. It's like, yeah, no shit, but that's not what we're doing here. We're just saying, like, those conferences really were kind of. It was like, all right, the only way you're getting a chance is if you go 13-0 and beat the absolute shit out of everyone that you play, and that just wasn't happening, for a lot of those conferences. But now, 12 teams, everyone gets a chance. What do we see, Ethan? See some exciting, down-to-the-wire, last-minute football, right? Absolutely not. You see 3 blowouts, and then you see one game that was fake close. So,
well, I think there were 2 games that were fake close. I think the Clemson Texas game got pretty fake close. It got to 1 score, and then Texas instantly scored like a 75-yard touchdown to take it back to 2 scores, and so that one was pretty fake close. I mean, I think Texas was up by like 21 or 24 at some point. Obviously, for those of you that don't know, I'm a Texas fan, so I was watching it. But again, like Chad was saying, kind of lost interest as the score got more and more out of hand. They started to come back. I got a little bit nervous because I know how Texas does, but they ended up coming through in the end. And then the Notre Dame-Indiana one was about as fake close as you can get. I mean, it was like
that one I'm just not.
It was 27-3, I think, with like 2.5 minutes left, and then they scored 2 straight touchdowns. So that was as fake close as it gets. But I'm more confused, I guess, as to what college football fans want. Because I thought the whole reason that the playoff in general, like even the 4-team playoff, was created was so that we could have multiple teams competing for a national title, and it was kind of like, all right, cool. But now it's kind of shifting to where it's like, well, actually, we probably know that SMU and Arizona State and Boise State aren't going to compete for a national title, but we want them to get that recognition as like, oh, they got in. And that's kind of sort of like an accomplishment for them. Which, for me, again, we talked about this on a previous episode, as a BCS lover, I kind of hold my hands up in the air and I'm saying, wait, I thought that was the cool part about having Boise State win the Fiesta Bowl. Or when TCU and Boise State made the, I think that was also the Fiesta Bowl or the Orange Bowl, one of the two, the 1 year Fiesta Bowl. Or when Kansas won the Orange Bowl that year, or when Hawaii also won a BCS Bowl. Like all those teams, and I'm sure that there are people that, I mean, when West Virginia was part of the Big East, they were always the darling of the non-Power 5 conferences. Like, yeah, there's the Power 5 conferences, then there's Boise State, TCU, and West Virginia. Like, they were kind of one of those teams.
My favorite of all of those kind of games that you talked about, team, where it was like, why is this team in it versus...
South Florida?
No, definitely not. It was Louisville when they were, I think they were still in the Big East at the time. They were 8-4, ranked 25th in the country, had some quarterback named Teddy Bridgewater, going up in the Sugar Bowl against Florida, who was third, literally ranked third at the time. And, of course, I think it was 2 SEC teams. That might even been the year Bama played LSU or something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me. But there was definitely an SEC team in the championship. So, really, if Florida was in any other conference, they would have been playing in the national championship that year.
Right.
But I remember Teddy Bridgewater gets blown up. I mean, literally gets his helmet taken off on the first drop back of the game, and I'm thinking, man, this dude might not even be alive in the second half. And then, of course, Louisville goes on to win the game. That kind of starts the buzz of, hey, man, this Bridgewater guy might be all right. And then he turns into a first-round pick. Solid career, all that stuff. So
yeah.
That would always stand out for me.
So I guess I just don't know what college football fans want, because there were people that were pissed off that SMU got in, because they're like, oh, Ole Miss or Alabama are better than them, which I can't disagree with. I mean, if they played 10 times, Alabama or Ole Miss probably win 8 or 9 of them. But then everyone was getting pissed off, like, oh, does Alabama even deserve to get in? You know, stuff like that. Or does Ole Miss deserve to get in if they can't, win the game they're supposed to? And it's like, so what do we want? Do we actually want the 12 best teams? Like, do you just want them to, like, have a freaking showcase game against FCS South so that we can, see who the coolest team is? Or do you want them to actually have the 12 teams that deserve it the most? And then because people are pissed off, Indiana's schedule sucked. Well, they blew everybody out that they played outside of Ohio State. I don't know what else you want. Every other year, that's a top 12 team. If there was an M on the side of their helmet instead of the IU, they would have definitely been probably a top 5 team. They would have been what Texas was this year, because Texas didn't beat anybody either. Lost the 2 games against any good teams. So the whole brand, my boy Joel Klatt goes into this a lot on Fox Sports, and he's very good at being like, the old traditional college football doesn't mesh with this new era of college football where, we want to preserve the bowls, but also we want this playoff, but we want to preserve the brands, but we also want teams like SMU and Arizona State to get a shot. It doesn't really mesh very well. What are you seeing, I guess, as someone that hasn't really been into it as much? Now, not saying that you were ignorant to it completely, but now you're kind of getting all of it at once right around the actual playoff occurring.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept that you mentioned from Joel Klatt, who I think actually does do some good work. He's probably one of the more underrated college football guys. But I think it is kind of a mesh or a collision of two different worlds where, look, the teams we just mentioned as all the teams were in a 12-team playoff, there's no way, Indiana, SMU, Boise, Arizona State, even like some of these teams, if you would have even said like 1 year ago when they announced like, hey, all right, the 12 team is coming in next year, who's in your 12 team? Well, I got Boise State, Arizona State, I got SMU, by the way, I got Indiana going 11-1, and people will be looking at you like, what? When can we fire this guy?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're just kind of coming out of an era where there was an ungodly amount of, or an ungodly lack of parity, really, in college football for about a decade. I mean, I think Bama probably played in 7 national titles. That feels low to say. It feels like they played in a national title every year for, between 2008 and 2 years ago. And then all of a sudden Clemson comes on the scene, and it's like Clemson's a legitimate, rival for them for a good 4 or 5 years. So they're able to, sustain it. And then once Clemson falls off, then Georgia, kind of comes on the scene. So it's like, and all the while it's like Ohio State is kind of like one of the teams. So, it's that perpetual joke of, hey, before the season even starts, we can name exactly what the playoff is going to be, right?
Yep.
So I do think that it's better that we're outside of that era. But I don't know how much of that has to do with the 12-team playoff, or even, I love everyone. I know everyone loves to say that the NIL is the reason for everything, but I just don't know if. I think we just saw an unprecedented era of sustained dominance from teams that it's not like you can really expect that to happen for 2 straight decades or something like that.
Yeah.
Parity was bound to come regardless.
Yeah. Also, the way the transfer portal and NIL has come into it. If you look at some of these teams like SMU and Indiana especially, like they were just more or less quick rebuilds. Like Indiana, with Curt Cignetti, bring all his guys from JMU. I don't know how the hell that translates to winning, but I guess it does. But, you can kind of see that a team can flip their roster in one summer rather than being like anyone that's played a college football game, in the old games knows, you got to have that first season where then you get the good recruiting class in. Then you got to still suck for another year or two as you're getting, other good guys. And this whole time you're still not even recruiting 4 or 5 stars. You're just getting guys that are underrated probably. Then you start winning some games and you can get the 4 or 5 stars. That's what a rebuild looked like when I was growing up. It was like a team over, half a decade to a decade, just getting better and better and better. Like a coach takes over and they're 2-10, and then in his 8th year he gets to a Cotton Bowl and gets blown out by a big brand. Like that was what a rebuild was. And then maybe get a bigger job or maybe get like an NFL job or something like that. And that's kind of what it was. Now you kind of see, okay, we're a team that was, Colorado, even though they didn't make the playoff, you kind of see how quickly they've turned over their roster. So just quick shout out to SMU. Me and Chad, huge 30 for 30 fans. If you've never seen the 30 for 30 Pony Excess, the 1990 SMU season. If anyone knows what their record was, I would love for you to put in the comments right now before I reveal it. Chad, you have a guess, right? 1990, what SMU's record was?
I believe it was 0-0. If I'm
Did-
not mistaken.
Didn't have a football team. It got cut for basically 2 years. It got absolutely, like, it didn't exist. They didn't have a football program. They didn't have scholarships. They didn't have any of that stuff because of their illegal recruiting practices. And now, again, though it's a long time later, 30 years later, now they're playing literally for a national championship. I know they didn't get to the national championship game, but they're in the process of playing for a national championship, even though they got blown out. It's really, really awesome to see and kind of exciting for those programs. I mean, the ones that have been basement dwellers forever. It's exciting for those programs as well. I don't want to do we probably shouldn't do another 45 minutes on it, even though I probably could. And I know you're actually excited about it, which makes me happy. But the round 2 matchups, Penn State, Boise State, Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, and Oregon, a rematch from that game earlier this year, and then Georgia, Notre Dame. I mean, I really have all the favorites. I'm looking at the odds right now. I definitely have Texas going through. I have Oregon going through, even though Ohio State are favored, which is crazy. And then Penn State and Georgia. Georgia somehow, somewhere only favored by 1.5. But that's who I have going through. Do you have the same, or are you flipping on one of those games?
Yeah, I would say the same as you on most of those. I do think Ohio State being favored is just like, I think there's just been this kind of collective couple year long wake up where it's like we're just waiting for Ohio State to show that one game, against a good team where we can be like, okay, we believe them now, and I think Tennessee was a good enough team in the regular season, and then, Ohio State played well enough against them for it to be like, all right, they made the statement, now all of a sudden, they're here to stay and they're going to play that good every single game, which I think is just kind of unrealistic. I mean, as you mentioned, I'm more of an outsider looking in, but I think Oregon's probably been the most consistent team from start to finish the entire season. And when you're talking about 19 to 22-year-olds, I like the safety of having a group that's been consistent for 4 months or something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you on all the picks. Yep.
Perfect. So I'm right. Me and Chad kind of created a segment for our next sort of section, talking about sort of playing on the whole present or on the whole Christmas theme. We're recording this on the 23rd. We got Christmas in 2 days, and Chad came up with a great idea of having sort of presents and coal, COAL, like the thing you get if you're a naughty boy all year. No, not me. And so I think, again, I talked to him about this before we started recording, but I always like it when we kind of have the same, we just give a very thinly veiled, what the segment's going to be about, and then we kind of take it and run 2 different ways with it. So I think that's what we did here. I'm not sure if you want me to go first and talk about my pick or not, but like my first present or my first piece of coal, but yeah, let's just hop into it. Which one do you want? You want me to go first, or you want you to go first?
Well, I want you to go first, but just real quickly before we do, I want us to kind of explain what our thought process was during this thing. So,
That's what I was going to say. I was going to go, like, if you wanted me to go first, I would explain kind of how I took it and what,
absolutely.
and then when you go, you'll be like, all right. So for my presents, I kind of was like, this thing is, this individual thing is a present for this person, this team, for the league overall. This thing that has been happening either around this period or at the beginning part of this season, this is a present for the league. So that's kind of how I took it. And so, of course, the first present that I had, and this was a present really for the entire Premier League. Here you go, guys. Man City's in 7th at Christmas. That was... Man City being 7th at Christmas is really the best present that I could possibly ask for. I've tried to sort of hide some of my City hate publicly, but I really can't. I'm super publicly, for the most part. I've tried. It comes out every once in a while, but I really can't stand the City thing at all. I can't. And with all the charges and stuff that have been thrown their way, I mean, one charge you can say Inocencio proven guilty. 5 charges, it kind of makes me turn my nose up a bit. When you get over 100, that's when it's like, all right, there has to be some sort of fire somewhere if there's all this smoke. So them continuing to dominate, and I have to say how all these players are amazing just because they wear that sky blue kit. And, you know, all the unlikable players they have, you know, Jack Grealish holding up the 3 to his old Aston Villa fans. And they booed him the whole time, so I don't really mind it. It's just like, dude, you suck. And so I kind of wanted to explore why a little bit, and I'm not like an expert by any means. I just wanted to throw out a couple of like baby theories. Like obviously the no Rodri thing is huge, but like the other quality that they have in midfield, maybe not a destroyer or DM, which I think a lot of people sort of miscast Rodri as. I don't really think he's as much of a destroying 6 as people try to make him out to be. But I mean, you know, what do I know? So we have him, so that's obvious. But then you look at the midfield they put out the weekend. It was Kovacic, Bernardo Silva, and Gundogan. Again, I speak a lot of times as an Arsenal fan. If you asked anybody in the world, hey, are those midfielders better than Arsenal's midfielders? Everyone, 100 times out of 100 people would say yes. They'd be like, oh, they have trophy winners. Oh, they have quality. Oh, they have this, that, and the other. They're winners. But yet, they literally aren't at the moment. So they have overall lack of quality. Have you been watching City over the past 2 months, Chad?
I have, and the thing that's been shocking to me, you know, in the midfield that you just named, completely embodies it, is not even the lack of quality. Because I think even when you look at that midfield 3, when you look at, you know, those guys on the ball or in the final third, I still think you would say that those are guys who you're really comfortable with making decisions in the final third. For me, I think the scary thing is more, you know, when you're in the middle third or when you're competing for possession, or especially in transition. I mean, transition. I think City's conceded 27 goals in the Premier League this year. I would argue at least. I mean, I don't know. It feels crazy to say 50%, but maybe close to 50% of those would be, you know, in some sort of transition or semi-transition type of scenarios.
Both the goals they conceded at the weekend were those transition scenarios.
Exactly.
But like just to sort of clarify, I don't mean that they have a lack of quality. I mean when they're playing, they lack quality, which to me is insane. That's why I've written here lack of quality, which is insanity. Like their actual passes, they just don't complete them, or like you said, like they just don't track their runner, or they just don't win a header that they should be winning. Like Gvardiol is the worst defender of all time. I think it's pretty well publicized now, but like just balls that skip into his feet that he just misses. And it's just like, what are we doing here? Or like Kyle Walker just getting skinned by league average wingers. And it's like, what's going on? And, you know, Phil Foden, who I said all last year wasn't the PFA player of the year, I never thought he would be this bad. But it's just,
he finally scored.
I was about to say, yeah, check on me. He got on the score sheet, but it's like, how is the qualities this far? Look, like I'd never hailed Foden as like the next coming of whatever, but I never thought he would be like this. You know, maybe there's some stress from the trial, but kind of where I've landed on this whole Man City thing is I just can't wait for the documentary to come out in 2042 about the shit that was going on behind the scenes during this season. Especially if it doesn't turn around at all, like if they end up finishing outside of a Champions League place, there's going to be some sort of something that comes out that's like something between players, or Pep did something to the players, or, you know, something they knew more about the trial than the club are letting on right now. Like something's happening rather than, like, over just the team can't play anymore.
If I gave you even odds for every player, who would you say, given like your 2 or 3, or maybe even 1 if you think there's like just a glaring one, couple of guys who you think have had the biggest dust-ups with Pep, you know, behind closed doors this season? Because I got 2 people who are standout candidates for me.
I mean, KDB is number 1.
Yep. 100%.
Because he doesn't even play, which is, again, 10 seconds. Somehow, some way, probably, maybe, and I know you old heads don't want to admit this, maybe the best midfielder in the history of the league just doesn't play for his club anymore. And and no one talks about it. That's small club stuff. Hate to break it to you guys, but that is small club stuff. If Bukayo Saka got benched, if I don't even know who fuck United's best player, but if Bruno Fernandes got benched like that, if Mohamed Salah got just straight up benched like that, it would be the first story of every single news cycle. But since it's not, it's because they're a small club. Go on with what you were saying.
First, well, I'll just counter your side note. I think the small club, big club argument is easily the dumbest thing in the history of the sport. But this doesn't mean I disagree with your analysis of it. But I'm just saying, in general, I think the big club versus small club thing is stupid.
Yeah, because people use it to make fake arguments. I agree.
Yeah. And then I don't even remember what the main topic.
You were talking about odds-on people having bust-ups with Pep.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I was prepared to come in and say the same thing about De Bruyne, where it's like, oh, he just doesn't play. The funny thing about it is, in the last 6 games prior to, because he got left out of the was that Villa?
Villa, yeah.
Yeah, got left out of the squad for the Villa game. He had started the previous 5 games before that, or 6 games even in all competitions before that. Had actually played 3 full 90s, and taken off in like the 75th in the other one. So he has been playing, like, he actually has had a really nice run of consistently playing again. But the scary part is that hasn't done anything for him. It's not like, all right.
And he gets taken off when they need a goal too.
Yeah, that's the weird part is where when they go 2-1 down, or when someone levels it at 2-2 or something, it's like, all right, let's hook De Bruyne. It's like, that doesn't really make a ton of sense. But I think he's on his last legs, kind of he is on his last legs, kind of at the top level. I think he's got MLS written all over him in June or July.
Or Saudi, I guess.
I don't think he would go to Saudi. I just don't. But then the other guy who I think Pep has definitely had some bust-ups with, got to be Kyle Walker.
Kyle Walker, yeah.
You mentioned it earlier, but I just think he's atrocious at this point. I mean, really, because I mean, you know me, I never really rated him outside of, hey, he's got recovery pace.
Mm-hmm.
But this season has been, his positioning, I think, has just been even worse. And now he's lost half of a step. And at that level, when you lose half of a step, like considering the guys he's supposed to, be step for step with, or the guys who you think that he's supposed to be able to cover against, he just hasn't been able to. He really just hasn't been able to. On the ball, he hasn't brought anything to that side in at least 5 years.
Yep.
Other than the occasional long shot that'll go in a rosette. And you can even see it where when everybody is healthy, which I will say, I'll admit, Man City haven't had a lot of games, but Walker's not in the first choice 11. That's Rico Lewis is holding down that right back spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think both of those two guys guaranteed going to be their last. I think there are a good 4 or 5 guys, to be quite honest, who are in their last year at City, but those two specifically. And I could see him kind of being like, you know what, F it. Like, let's get in a little. Let me go 12 rounds with Pep real quick.
Yeah. So since again we kind of took different paths on what they are, I kind of want to give my second present just so we can kind of create that through line of consistency. My second present goes, funnily enough, to my co-host. Goes to Chad. He sent me multiple texts over the past couple of weeks with just a name. Actually, this is me and Chad's. Probably my personal favorite gimmick that me and Chad have just in our personal lives is just watching a sport or a game or whatever. Something happens, like if I say a basketball player is actually good, I just text him like Jared Allen, and then he looks, he's like, oh shit, he was 20 and 15 tonight, that kind of a thing. And so I've gotten multiple just Dean Houston texts this month, which I really, really enjoy. He's started Bournemouth's last 4 matches. Didn't really play a part at all at the beginning of the season. Now, ever since really the beginning of November, he's been filtered into the side more and more. Now he's seemed to. I mean, it's only been 4 matches, like I said, this run, but he seemed to have locked up that center back position pretty decently. In those 4 matches, they've had 3 wins and a draw. Obviously, that big 3-0 win against United at Old Trafford, which I believe is the second time they beat United 3-0 in the past year, which is kind of hilarious. Dean Houston in that time has 2 goals and a man of the match, and now Bournemouth are sitting in 5th position on 28 points, which is one of the things that I feel like I need to get better at as a person that watches a lot of football. I'm just such a sucker. I'm not good at calling for people's jobs. I'm just not. And so when Gary O'Neill lost his job at Bournemouth and they were bringing this Andoni Iraola guy, I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he taking over for Gary O'Neill? Because I think Gary O'Neill finished like at 10th or 11th or something like that with Bournemouth. And I was like, why would they, Bournemouth, as long as they're staying up, they should be happy. And now they're punching above their weight. They should be even happier. Now I see why. Because, Iraola has them playing really good stuff. And me and Chad are probably going to say this 1,000 times over the next month. But we get it. All right? Just temper your expectations, because this is not going to be the final table. Especially when you get into sort of that mid-table range. Crystal Palace proves it every year because they're 16th on April 1st and they finish up 11th or 10th. So that mid-table sort of scrap gets funny, but I mean them sitting in 5th on 28 points, funnily enough, just below Forest. So I wanted to give I thought that was a nice Christmas present for Chad. I think Andoni Iraola watches this and he was like, you know what, I believe in Chad too. Let me give Houston some starts around the holidays, and he's been really, really good. So I wanted to give you that nice little present, right before the big day.
2 things I love most about Houston's game, because of course I've been stalking him like a crazy ex.
He said it in the preseason. Chad said it in the preseason before a ball was kicked in the Premier League. He said Dean Houston, this move would be like a game changer for Bournemouth. So I'm beyond holding my hands up.
This has been, it's been an okay year for me. I'm not gonna but Jamie Gittins is like Dortmund's best player this year. Houston's doing what he's doing. I'm feeling good. I got those 2. Houston, the thing I love most about him, obviously on the ball, very cultured, very calm. It's not even just about playing the right pass or playing the pass to the right person, but the fact that he puts the perfect weight on just about every single pass that I saw him play. Did get caught in possession one time where United had a really clear-cut chance that they ended up not converting at all. But
which happens. He's a teenager.
Yeah, exactly. But Houston, his weight of pass and then understanding where the ball is supposed to go. Like, there are guys who they can just play switches all day long, and they look great and they're awesome, but they're not necessarily doing something for the team sometimes. And then there's other center backs who, can just play the 5-yard pass to the center back next to him, and you look up and it's like, man, Ruben Diaz has a 98% pass completion percentage and averages 115 passes a game, and it's like, great on paper, that sounds good, but Houston kind of brings a bit of both, which is really impressive, as you mentioned, for a guy as young as he is. So, I'm definitely going to have to co-sign that one. Real quick, though, as we were talking about crazy predictions, anyone that had Bournemouth over City at Christmas, just go ahead and DM us. Like you can get on the pod next episode. You can host it, actually. We'll send the show over to you. You can get all the login info and all that. We'll actually just give it to you. So.
There's a lot of I didn't have X on my 2024 Christmas card. The Bournemouth over City the Forest and Bournemouth over City at Christmas might have been like the most off the wall shout. I mean, Dean Houston, going back to him very quickly for just 1 second. I mean, when you're born a Dutchman and then moved to Spain at 5 years old, I think you're going to probably have a pretty good technical base.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, I mean, that's really exciting. I'm just really hoping and praying that he doesn't become one of these mid-table merchants where he's just like one of those players that's always, if he played for a bigger club, if he got that move, and then he gets the move too late, like your boy Koulibaly to Chelsea. And then it's kind of just like, oh, this was the guy everyone was talking about for 10 years. This was the guy that, and I hope that doesn't happen. I hope the Bournemouth expedition for him will end by the end of 2027 and we can see him at a bigger club. If they recover financially, he kind of screams Barcelona.
100%.
I mean, the Dutch-Spanish thing is like made for them. How big is Dean Houston? Is he big?
I mean, I think he's maybe. You're putting me on the spot.
6'5". Okay, so he's 6'5", which checks out because he scored 2 goals. But that part doesn't scream Barca. Like having a center back that's actually center back size is kind of unlike them.
They're used to the 5'10" guys.
Yeah, like Pau Cubarsí looks like how I looked when I was that age, and I was not built very well, and I wasn't playing against grown men. So, yeah. But so those are my 2 presents. All right, a present to the world with Man City and 7th at Christmas, and then a present specifically to Chad. Dean Houston really coming through in a big way for overachieving Bournemouth side right now. So, Chad, why don't you get onto your presents and kind of tell us how you sort of took this idea in your mind?
Absolutely. So what I did is I looked at it more of added presence being something that you can give to this team. You know, since we're talking obviously Premier League soccer, most of it's going to be maybe transfer based. Or something along those lines. So that's what I kind of felt were as far as my presence that I was going to be giving to teams. And the first present that I want to give out is actually Bournemouth is one of the teams. Forest, Bournemouth, and Fulham. I don't want their teams to get rated by big sides in January. That's the present I would love to have for them. The reason. I mean, you talked about it, man. Like, Forest and Bournemouth are playing really well. They're both right there, like, legitimately in Champions League conversation as of right now. Fulham, yes, they're sitting in 9th, but they're also, they're 3 points back of 5th.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're absolutely flying as well. And you see so many of the guys, right, whether it's, all 3 of those teams, I'm pretty sure their left back has been linked with United at some point.
Milos Kerkez, I've heard his name really ever since he moved to the club.
Yeah, and then it's funny. I actually think Forest maybe have had the most consistent left back of any of them to start this season with the Anya, I think is his name.
Who, Ola Aina?
Yeah.
Chelsea legend, yeah. Scored the other day.
Yeah, exactly. So all 3 of those guys are like, hey, man, United need a left wing back.
Please don't.
So, right, exactly. Because not only do I not think it would be fun for United, but I also I want to see, I like seeing the year where it's funny because I've always thought of myself as a elitist.
Yeah.
But I don't mind seeing the one team out of the 4 where it's like, oh shoot, Forest ended up making the Europa League this year or something like that. Or even, heck, the Champions League, although I think the Champions League sometimes isn't as fun because then the year after, the magic goes
downhill, yeah.
Same thing. Yeah, exactly.
But also, yeah, but also, like, it's not elitist if the teams actually are playing well. Like,
yes,
if it was just some sort of thing, like, to where, again, it was like some eye test thing, and it was just like, oh, well, we're going to put them up there because we like them. It's like, no, that's dumb. But, like, Forest are actually winning games and playing well. Spurs looking 7 spots up in the league to find their old manager must kind of be a huge kick in the teeth. And, Bournemouth, again, playing really good stuff. When we played against them, we lost 2-0. I'm looking at their attackers. I'm like, Semenyo, why can't I think of it? Kluivert, that dude freaking Evan Nielsen. I don't think I've ever seen him shoot the ball or get on the ball, but he's a handful just by running in behind and hassling and harrying people and being on the front foot. And I swear to God, this dude wins more penalties and fouls than I've seen of a player of that quality. Like Hazard and Neymar were pretty famous for winning a lot of fouls. But, like, they were on the ball winning fouls. This dude just runs in front of people, gets kicked, and then they point to the spot every single time. So, they have legitimate attacking threats, and then somehow, some way, they'll just get, like, a monster game out of, like, Lewis Cook will just take over a game and be the best midfielder on the pitch. And I'm just like, why? Like, why? Well, it's probably because of Iraola.
Even Adams looked really good for them in that United game. Granted, if he could play 3 games in a row, then it's all of a sudden.
No, Greg isn't the manager of the U.S. anymore. He'll find a way to stay on the pitch. Shout out to episode 17, I think it was.
We'll get Kickbush back on, and he'll break it down for us.
Yeah.
Although I will say on that note also, Gio Reyna started the last 2 games.
Scored a goal.
Hey, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
The Michael Jordan shit. Did you have another present for us? Is it, obviously I love to see those teams stay together too, and I also don't think, just very quickly before we move on to your next present, I just don't think a lot of those clubs have players that are like move worthy, I guess. Like, I don't think clubs are like licking their lips to be like, yo, we need to get Clivert in this January. Like, oh man, we got to get more. I mean, even Morgan Gibbs White, who I think is probably the most talented player of those 3 clubs that you said. But I don't think anyone's licking their lips to be like, you know what, I got to pay 60 for Morgan Gibbs White right now. That's the difference between us being good and not good, or being this level and that level.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Although I got to say, I could easily see Tottenham talking.
No, Spurs.
Into a £50 million bid for Gibbs White, which I got to say, I'm pretty sure that's almost what Forest paid for him. So they wouldn't even probably entertain that, because I know he's their record signing.
They can't have him and Brendan Johnson at the club at the same time. It's just them two and Solanke. It's just too much mid-table light skin.
Yeah.
It's just too much mid-table quality light skinned attackers. It wouldn't work.
Fair enough. Although Solanke and Johnson have had decent spells at points during the year, so who knows? They just need a quick injection. The second one that I'm going to have for you is actually continental based, and this is Cole and present, so I'm gonna temper it a little bit towards Real Madrid. Just real quickly, the present I would love for us is a center back that Carlo trusts to rotate. Because Rudiger has played.
Dean Houston?
No, I mean, look, I saw Carlo give a great interview maybe about a month or 2 ago, talking about actually integrating young players into the squads of like the teams that he's coached at, and he's like, look, at the big clubs, you're not paid to bring in new talent, to bring up young talent.
Play the best players.
Yeah, you're paid to win the next match. So whatever can be done for you to enhance your chances of that happening, that's what you're going to do. Most of the time, as we've talked about all the time, playing 18 to 20-year-olds usually is not a recipe for winning a lot of games, especially at a top level. So I need them to bring in some sort of center back that, for whatever reason, Carlo would be able to trust. And I know it's kind of outside of Madrid's transfer policy, but it's something that I just think is needed. I mean, even a guy like, I know these names are going to sound crazy to you, but even if it's like an Aymeric Laporte, a Milan Skriniar type, not necessarily a guy who's going to come in and start every single game, but a guy who, when you're playing Valencia, who is our first game back after the Christmas break, which now means we'll lose to him that I'm saying this, but just someone who can give you 90 minutes against Valencia, or something like that. Because we actually only have one true senior center back
that's fit
in the squad. Yeah. Rudiger's the only one. And the Alaba thing, which is, that story is crazy because it's like every 2 weeks it's pushed back longer. Like first he was gonna be back in the beginning of December, then he was gonna be back on January the 1st. Now he's gonna be back like mid-January, and before you know it, it's gonna be like March, and he's played 2 games. So we need someone who can actually play.
This is how I felt about Jurrien Timber last year, because I kept hearing, I was hearing reports in like February that he was in like full team training and stuff. Yeah. They were like, he might be back by March, stuff like that. So the injury stuff, that's why, when Chad first got into soccer, I used to love joking on him because he would always buy into they said Real Madrid signing Mohamed Salah tomorrow. Did you hear? Dude, did you hear? Real Madrid signing this guy. It's like, dude, unless I see him holding a shirt that says his name with the manager and the director and Florentino Perez shaking his hand, I'm not going to believe it. Same with injuries. Until I see his name in the squad, in the matchday squad, I'm just not going to even think about him being there, which is very poignant for me now with Bukayo Saka. But are those the 2 guys that you come to mind? Because it has to be a weird balance between guys that are not blockbuster moves because you're probably not going to be able to get that done in January. And then when those guys do come back and they are fit, then it's going to get awkward there. But also, you can't, like you said, have a guy that's Jesus Vallejo quality, and it's just like we just needed a human to stand there because really you have that, and he still doesn't play. So clearly, something above that Jesus Vallejo level is necessary. I would implore you. There's a guy by the name of Jakob Kivior. I would love 20 million pounds. I would love 20 million pounds for him if you had it. He's not horrible. He's not horrible. I don't care what anybody says. He's a league average center back. If he played for Everton tomorrow, if he switched names with Jared Brentwaite, he would get an England call up. That's all I'm going to say. But go on.
Maybe. I haven't watched as much Kivior as you. I'm not as locked into him, although I wouldn't take him. Yeah, I think those are two of the main names. I mean, you kind of articulated it perfectly. It's got to be a guy who, is kind of, it's crazy to say when you're talking about Madrid, especially considering they've been well run over the past couple of years. It's kind of got to be like a budget signing level player. A guy who genuinely is coming in to do a job for 6 to 12 months, and then you're comfortable moving on. I mean, those two kind of come to mind. Presnel Kimpembe is another name who comes to mind
with his stapled Achilles.
Yeah, that's the thing is like every guy that I'm naming, there's like a
Achilles, literally an Achilles heel.
Yeah,
like a fatal flaw. That's like, this could happen.
So, I mean, even if you want to go to, like, Chelsea and say, hey, who's your fifth choice center back right now? Would you say it's Disasi, Badiashile, like either one of those guys? Could we take them on for a year, and we'll pay you a fee for them? But
this screams like weird move that nobody has, like, on their books, like a mid-table Premier League club, just like with an extra center back, like a club that plays a 3-back, for example. Like, well, he just moved, so not like him, but like a guy like a Trevor Chalobah, like that kind of guy, just being like, probably more of a foreign guy than an English guy, but like just a guy that's like
maybe Wout Fast.
Yeah, Wout Fast, like someone like not that person, but someone that's playing for one of the mid-table clubs. Maybe like a West Ham level club that's just like Real Madrid. That's like Real Madrid's called and they want you to play for them. It's like, what? Really? Yeah. Sure, I'll go and play for them. Why not?
Yeah, and that's the thing that sucks is it kind of has to be something like that, but I don't know like what one of those signings would be good enough to make me be like, all right.
I see a lot of guys talking about that center back signing. The thing I'm not hearing is who that guy is.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully it's Cal Bassi, just so I can watch him play for Real Madrid.
No, if it was Calvin Bassi, I can promise you I'd be out on the team. I'd be out on the team if we signed Bassi. That's just a fundamental rule I have. But yeah, so those are the two presents that I'm wishing for these teams in the new year. Ethan, let's go back to you on the Cole side of things. I want to kind of focus on what you have because I couldn't come up with any really good ones that I had.
Yeah, so again, I kind of took this as, for me, it was someone that was handed Cole, either this part of this early part of the season or just at this time. Russell Martin was the first person that came to mind. Not the guy that played catcher for the Yankees, the old Southampton manager. I had a couple of things that I wrote down here, just kind of brainstorming. I think we learned through one of my favorite Premier League managers of all time to watch, Ralph Hasenhüttl, that losing 5-0 at home is not a disqualifier at Southampton. It's just not. He did it twice in a year, and he didn't get sacked. Obviously, either time he eventually got sacked, but it was after a lot of other things went down. So I'm kind of tired of hearing the people like, well, when you lose 5-0 at home and you're da-da-da-da. It's like, well, I mean, shit, Hasenhüttl lost 9-0 twice. So I don't really think that's a disqualifier at the club. What is he supposed to do is also a question that I had down here. He has one of the 2 worst squads in the league, like not even close to the other ones.
Easily.
And then Who has the most G+A in the Southampton squad?
I mean, maybe Dibbling.
He has 1 assist, actually.
He's talked about like he's won Player of the Year 2 years in a row.
It's Adam Armstrong with how many goals and assists?
4?
3. He's the only Southampton player with more than 2 goals plus assists. So, and then kind of to curtail your point, Tyler Dibbling's kind of their only bright spark, but he's 18, as you just described. Like, I'm not going to hang my shoulders on an 18-year-old unless his name is Lamine Yamal, who's 17. And then I have another category in this note that it's just literally just says other nut shit. They are 0 for 2 on pens this year. Missed them both. They have 3 red cards this year. Jack Stevens somehow, some ways, already been sent off twice. And Cameron Archer.
One of them was for pulling Cucurella's hair, I think.
Correct.
Which is like, come on, dude. This is 2024. That's old stuff.
Yeah, that's the Marouane Fellaini on Matteo Guendouzi back in the day. He didn't even get a foul call for it, which was nice. And then Cameron Archer, who's supposed to be their star signing, the new guy they brought in, he's underperforming XG by 3 whole goals. So I think he has 2 goals, and those are his only goal contributions. I think he should have 5.5 or something like that by XG. So I mean, he missed a penalty. He also missed a huge chance. I forgot who they played last week, but he missed a huge chance against them early in the game. Oh, he also in the FA Cup missed a big ass chance against Liverpool. So
I remember watching his. I don't even remember who it was that they played when he took the penalty, but I remember watching the game and I was like, God, if I could bet the mortgage on this penalty, I would definitely bet on a miss.
Yeah,
and then he did.
So it's just like. I think Russell Martin was just handed the worst hand of all time. I mean, he came in last year too. Like, this isn't a guy that has taken the club up and down. It's just like, hey, we need to change. It's like, I don't even think this dude. I think he was at the club for like 13 months or something, or 12 months or something like that. And it's just like, I don't even like. I get it. You want to stay in the league, but what do you expect is going to happen? That there's going to be some magical manager out there. And I think they drew 0-0 over the weekend, so I guess they're back now. There's going to be some magical manager that if we just bring them in, they're going to make Jack Stevens play like a league average center back. They're going to make Adam Armstrong into a actual goal scorer. They're going to make Cameron Archer perform at XG. Like, I don't understand really what they're expecting Russell Martin to do. And I guess this came from Russell Martin rather than the club. The early stuff in the season, like, we're going to play our football. I don't care if we're losing 17-0. If we give it away 4 times in a row, I don't care. And so I guess that came more from Russell Martin than the club. But, like, I don't really know what they were expecting them to do with this team, with the quality that they have, the depth that they have. And compared to the rest of the league, even other promoted sides like Leicester just have so much more quality than them. And so they were like, I mean, a little piece of coal for Russell Martin. It's like, yeah, you have the worst. You manage the worst team in the league. Here's the sack. So I don't really understand.
And the part that sucks for them is like, a couple years ago, Southampton were thought of as like a club where it's like, all right, they might go down. They're going to be in a relegation scrap no matter what, but they're going to play some exciting young guys. They're going to really develop some young players. You look at their most used guys right now, the only one, I mean, now all of a sudden their top used guys are all like 25 to 27.
Nope.
Like the only ones that are younger than that, or that are young in their most used 11 would be Dibbling, who we talked about, who's 18 and does look really promising, but it's just so hard to when he's like the only, creative, force in the entire team. And then Matias Fernandez, who's 20, who is fine. Like, I think he's good. He's had moments, but, like, it just doesn't scream that exciting prospect kind of that we've maybe become accustomed to. All right, Southampton, they may go down, but at least they're going to have, someone like almost. I mean, not to bring his name up for the 15,000th time, but like a Dean Houston type is kind of like a type of guy you would think of to come through a Southampton type,
right?
And it just, for whatever reason, they just don't have any of those guys right now, and they're still, the worst club in the league, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because when I first started watching football, that was probably the 2012-13 season. It was their first year up, and I think they had Poch as a manager at the time, and he was doing great things with them. And I want to say they either made the Europa League or they were like one spot away from the Europa League pretty early from when they got promoted. And like you said, they were kind of the model for what a small club should be: developing players, still playing good football, keep staying in the league, that whole kind of thing. And now it's kind of gone all off the rails, and I don't really know what they expect to be now. Yep. The other guy I had a piece of coal, or I felt was given a piece of coal this year, is James Maddison. It's kind of been an interesting look for James Maddison, because obviously as an Arsenal fan, I want to hate Spurs, but I just can't, because I just don't really feel like threatened by them, I guess. So he's been good this year. Like, I've watched him on multiple occasions. I think he's been pretty good. He actually has 7-4 in the league right now. 7 goals and 4 assists in a team that's now 11th in the league. The one thing that I think, though, is like, I'm just so glad that Spurs continue to play their football. Like, losing 6-3 at away is just, it's one of the things that really makes me love football. It really does. I'm just like, trying to pack in and maybe scrap a 1-0 against the team that's running away with the league right now. That's for the birds. No, I just want to go home and be like, we scored 3. And then if someone yells, hey, but you conceded 6, like, they're an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. It's all about scoring that 3. So I kind of feel for James Maddison. But the more I watch him, I just don't know what his level is. Because when you watch him, you're kind of like, maybe he's too good for this Spurs team right now. But then you look up the league and you're kind of like, I don't think he's at those teams' level. Like what the league looks like right now, maybe, yeah, maybe he could play at Forest and Bournemouth, places like that. But if you look like the traditional Big Six, like, do I think he's getting into that Chelsea team? No. Do I think he's getting that Arsenal team? No. I mean, shit, I guess at this minute he could help City, but, like, generally speaking, could he help City? No. Could he help, even if we're talking about the clubs that are just under that level, like, could he help a Brighton? I don't think so. Would he play a ton for Villa? I don't think so. So it's just, he's at a weird place where he's kind of, him and Eze, I think, are in the same sort of weird thing where it's like, you want to convince yourself, like, they're probably better than their current team, but they're not quite good enough to, like, demand a move and be like, we need to move now because we're so much better than this level. And I kind of feel for James Maddison a little bit, because a couple years back when Leicester were doing really well and finishing 5th, he was kind of in that conversation of he's going to take that step up to a big six club. And it was, at that time, it was more of a Man United type of look and, competing in the Champions League, things like that. He was getting England call-ups. Now he seems to be out of the England picture. He seems to be out of the, top of the table level player picture. He could be an interesting one, which has become more and more common recently. He could be an interesting one that could get a move to, like, an AC Milan or something like that, and he would do really well with it. Like, basically what Scotty McSauce has been doing this year. I could see James Maddison doing a similar thing. Maybe even in Germany, I think he could be a good player because he works decently hard. He's not overly physical, but I think in the Bundesliga, you can, especially a central player, if you have that work rate, that can kind of overpower your lack of athleticism a lot of times in that league.
Yeah, I think, I struggle with Maddison, honestly, because, a couple of great points you hit on. He kind of made that move, kind of like what you talked about. This is either last episode or a couple ago, but that guy who's perennially the name of, oh man, he's better than this mid-table side that he's on.
Mm-hmm.
But then he gets the move, and Maddison didn't finally get his till he was like 26. He came to Tottenham last year.
It was when his team went down.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of came to Tottenham when they were in a period of transition too, not when they were like, maybe it just finished fourth and we're like, all right, now let's try to achieve more, compete for a trophy or something. Even though we know they'll obviously never win one. But I struggle to think like I don't really even know if he's part of their best 11 or like in their best group, their best midfield three. Because I just like him a whole lot more when Kulusevski's in there in the
Central. Yeah.
And that's something that while I agree, Ange's system, has caused some headaches this season. That's one thing that I think has been a bright spot for it because I don't think there are many managers who would see Kulusevski as a guy playing through the middle. He's so lethal, so prolific as a wide man that I think most people would just be like, all right, we know we can play wide. Let's just keep him there. Andrew's gotten him on the ball a bit more, kind of help increase some of his output numbers-wise and even performance-wise, just overall impact. But then that's kind of left Madison in a weird spot where it's like, all right, well, even though Andrew's tried it, for the most part, you can't play a midfield that has Madison and Kulusevski in it with even if you have the most defensive midfielder of all time. I don't think that's possible.
And Basuma does everything in his power to get sent off every game. Pop Sarr does everything in his power to give the ball away every time he gets it. So,
yeah, exactly. So, I think Madison. It was a great call for the move abroad thing. I actually think Spain would be a good league for him because the midfield transition isn't usually as fast as some of the other leagues. Like even Germany, I think their transition is a whole lot quicker, which could be. Not as good for him because, like you said, he's really limited athletically and physically. So
I would pay money to see the James Madison, Rodrigo De Paul, Conor Gallagher midfield playing in a big game in Spain and somehow, some way, like winning. Like I would pay all the money to see that.
I mean, I honestly don't even think he would be a bad shout for Barca. Like the way Barca is like how they are as a club, and maybe it's just I just think any bad signing is like a signing Barca would take. But it's just
that's messed up.
Who's a guy who's like kind of creative, but also kind of a technical midfielder who we can just kind of throw out there. I know Rafinha's taken up the spot on the left-hand side of their kind of front three this year, but like I'm not going to sit here and assume he's just taken up the left-hand side forever. So a guy who can maybe play on the left a little, play in the midfield, can cover multiple spots because we're only going to register 20 guys because we can't fit anyone's salary in. So I don't know. I think that kind of makes a bit of sense, but I could also see Atleti like that's not a complete recoil for me either. So I'm with that.
Yeah. So those are just a couple guys that I'm either really happy for or really sad for, I guess. Going into the new year, around Christmas time. Was there any coal that you had left over, or was it just something that you kind of was just like, I don't want to be sad around the holidays, so I'm just going to think about the good things about world football?
No, but I did come up with a call for non-soccer that I did want to test drive. You actually mentioned this to me, and I've just been kind of falling in love with the idea of it ever since then. And that would be a Eagles-Rams playoff game in the first round, followed by like a huge Rams win or last-second Rams win on the road. And if that did happen, we talked earlier about bets that you could put the mortgage on and feel absolutely safe. The A.J. Brown trade request that would happen at halftime of that game, I feel like would be comfortably it'd be off the board because it'd be such a lock to happen.
I would pay all the money in the world for the Rams to go up 4 with about a minute 10 left, and then the camera just zooms in on Jalen Hurts reading the defense and knowing he's about to throw the ball to the wrong team, and that would really make my new year. It really would, because luckily I haven't heard a ton about him, but since he's on the Eagles, it just pisses me off. I just don't even think he's one of the top 15 quarterbacks in the entire league. and he's just on this team that just wins games that in just these dumbass ways. And
yeah, it hasn't been that good this season. Definitely hasn't been good.
And so I'm just like ready. I mean, because I already hate the Eagles because I'm a Cowboys fan. So I'm just ready for them to lose in the playoffs in the worst way possible. That was the only silver lining of last season. Like, entire last season. Like, I was excited.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Chad and our other friend Daniel are going back and forth. Like, yeah, man, you know, this actually feels different. This might be the time we actually win a playoff game. So you guys know, win a playoff game. We didn't say they're going to win the Super Bowl. We said win a playoff game and then get blown out. And the only thing that made it better was the Eagles losing to the Bucs in the first round. So that made up for it.
Not even just losing to the Bucs, but specifically losing to
Baker. Who I'm in on. I love Baker somehow, some way. He's a Sooner, but I still have a heart for Baker.
Took the L against us last night.
I think my Baker love came from that Thursday night Rams win that he had. That just kind of that turned around my whole. That turned around my whole perception of him.
Turned around his career too. So.
It did. The last thing we wanted to get in on, we're gonna try to go quickly, but I don't really want to rush through it. I don't really mind doing a long episode. You know, more for them for the people to listen to be honest. So I am excited about this because it's something that is there's sort of no correct answer to ever. Like, the NBA Hall of Fame is such a weird thing where it's like this guy's in, but somehow this guy isn't in. This guy, like, all Hall of Fames, I feel like have weird things. The NFL Hall of Fame is just a complete other animal, and I can't wait till we have an episode talking about that. But the NBA Hall of Fame is pretty interesting, and so we have some people that are up for candidacy for the first time in 2025 that we kind of want to talk about, as well as a couple of people that are returning back on the ballot. And Chad, actually, I think you're supposed to be hosting this segment, so why don't you take it away for us?
Yeah, as you kind of mentioned, Basketball Hall of Fame. We could do a full episode just on like what. And notice we said Basketball Hall of Fame, not NBA Hall of Fame, not College Basketball Hall of Fame. Although I'm pretty sure the College Basketball Hall of Fame does exist.
Definitely exists, yeah.
But this is kind of one of the things that makes the Basketball Hall of Fame a tough thing to kind of decide who's in and who's out, because it's like, okay, what is it? This is, it's called the Basketball Hall of Fame. Does this mean every game from 6 years old when you first started until, you retire from whatever professional league you play in? Does all of that count? Because if so, then we could just save everyone some time and induct any NBA player that you've heard of in the grand scheme of things should be in a Basketball Hall of Fame because they've made it to the top, 1% of basketball since they've made it out of that rec league playing at Fort Monroe. Shout out. But then it's like, as Ethan said, okay, we clearly have some level of rules or some level of standards, but then you look at some guys where it's like, and I'm going to go ahead and name my favorite Hall of Famer, of course, and Ethan already knows who I'm about to say, Dennis Rodman.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Mitch Richmond.
No, you know what? Because Mitch at least scored. Mitch at least was able
to...
I mean, he was able... Yeah, like I said, he was able to score... Made some All-NBA teams even. Like, made a handful of All-NBA teams. So, Mitch... I'll lay off on Mitch Richmond today. But Dennis Rodman, one of the most overrated players of all time, if not the most, basically just got on the Hall of Fame because he dyed his hair and shit. Like, that's just how I feel.
This is my favorite topic for Chad to talk about is
when you look at
Dennis Rodman.
Two-time All-Star, 2 All-NBA appearances. In no world is that a Hall of Famer. We're talking about 2 All-Star games. Let me name you a couple of guys just off the top of my head who have made way more than 2 All-Star games. DeMar DeRozan, Chris Middleton, Kyle Lowry. Would you say those guys are no doubt Hall of Famers? Absolutely not. But for whatever reason, Dennis Rodman was a Hall of Famer, and there were people who were crying. And not only a Hall of Famer, Dennis Rodman, member of the NBA Top 75. How?
No, and then if you really want to get Chad going, you'll talk about how Draymond Green is the JV version of Dennis Rodman.
Not even going to. Not even going to do that one a day. Draymond, although I will say one sentence because you got me going. Draymond, literally twice as many All-Star appearances as him. Still 2 All-NBA appearances. 4 championships as a key member of all those teams. Dennis Rodman by 1997 and 1998, was he still a key member of the Bulls? No. If you watch the Last Dance, you definitely know that, even though they try to give him a pass. But he just wasn't a key
But you're
member.
not?
He was down to like 20 minutes a game in 1997 in the playoffs. Draymond would never have been there. And Draymond's made all defense 8 consecutive years. So that's all I'm saying. And Dennis Rodman could never score 32 points in a Game 7 elimination game against LeBron.
You could also never lose it.
No? Hey, say what you want. But yeah, so now Ethan's got me going. He's got my blood pressure kind of elevated a bit. So let's get into some guys. I figured the most fun way to kind of break this down is we're gonna rattle off some guys. You're either gonna say yes, no, or need more information. Kind of go through the resume, stuff like that.
I did a lot of resume research on on the new inductees. So
yeah, and even the ones that were saying yes, no, need more information. We're probably going to give some more info because if not, this segment would last like 1 minute.
And also, just for every listener, I'm the first to admit that I'm not the basketball savant. Like these are. I watch basketball. I know about basketball. I'm not a guy that's like could tell you the Hall of Fame class of 1984 or anything like that. So these are just kind of off the cuff thoughts. Like Chad's just going to say this name, and I'm just going to be like, that guy feels like he should be a Hall of Famer or not.
In honor of Bethel High School, Bowner argument. I think that you're actually the perfect person to ask because once you get into like maybe basketball nerd or whatever category I would be thrown in, like you shouldn't need to be in that category to know if someone's a Hall of Famer.
Fair. Like you to a casual, you should know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although that leads to guys like Derrick Rose getting in, which is going to happen. Just so you know.
Yeah, it will, and when that happens, I'm not sure if that'll piss me off worse than the Dennis Rodman one or not because like. I mean, I could argue the Derrick Rose for hours and still not know if there is a right answer. You're talking about right or wrong answer. I still don't know what the Derrick Rose right answer would be. So that's,
all right, let's start going through some of these guys.
All right. Yeah. No, we don't need to set it up for half an hour and then talk for 5 seconds. Let's do it. First name up. We're going kind of throwing the softballs at you first. Carmelo Anthony.
He's in.
Okay. Follow up from Melo. First ballot.
I say yes, first ballot for a couple of reasons. One, of course, 3-time gold medalist. That's the first thing on his resume. But I was looking at it. Like I really was doing some hardcore research on this last night because I specifically did not want to look like an idiot during this segment. 6-time All NBA, so it's not like one of those guys like we were talking about before. Like he had 2. Like he was always good, but he only had 2 seasons where people really put him in that tier. So he's 6-time All-NBA, 10-time All-Star. Best season in 06-07, 29-6. But probably the most impressive run that he had was that 09 playoff run where he was 27-6 and lost in 6 in the Western Conference Finals to Kobe, the team that eventually won the title. So this goes back to Bill. He made the case one time that Carmelo could have been Dirk on that kind of a team, where he's just like the scorer guy. I don't know if I 100% subscribe to it, but I think it's unfair that he doesn't have a finals appearance or something like that. He's always played on really weird teams. He's never like had a team where it's like, hey, this team should make the finals. The only times that he kind of had similar expectations to that was when he was on the Knicks, and it was literally only because he was on the Knicks playing at MSG. People were convincing themselves, like, Ray Felton should be able to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's like, what are we doing here? So I think he was actually kind of in that kind of Tracy McGrady camp of like kind of being unlucky with his teams, but he did better with it than even Tracy did because, he made it to the second round before. So.
Yeah, that is a crazy stat for McGrady that he literally never made round 2.
Unless you want to count when he was on the Spurs in like 14 or something like that and played 5 minutes the whole playoffs.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Melo, I agree with completely. You kind of summed it up perfectly. I don't know if I was prepared for the level of preparation.
I'm excited now. I'm getting excited about this segment, man. I was excited about it last night.
Melo, like, here's the thing. You can look at Melo's career through a couple of different lenses. One being, hey, we thought he was supposed to be in this.
He was supposed to be in the LeBron class, like that tier of player.
Yeah. And after, a year, heck, maybe even 2 years in the league, couple years in the league, you would have thought, like, okay, Melo is, Melo, D. Wade, and Bron are all kind of right there.
They're about to take over the league together.
Yeah, exactly. And Melo, I never reached the heights. I think the problem is, and the difference between him and Dirk is, he never fully well-rounded his offensive game enough. Like, Dirk was able to not only be the dominant post scorer, but Dirk was able to be a dominant setup man as well.
He's also a really good rebounder, to be fair.
Exactly. And Melo never kind of expanded his game in that way. Now, I will say, towards the end of his career, he started to become a knockdown three-point shooter, which was really nice. Kind of towards the end of his Knicks run, he became a volume 3 guy, but I think that was just because Woodson was like, hey, everybody jack him up.
Yeah, I wish he could have had that kind of a run where he's kind of like gets to be like Korver on the Cavs, where it's just like, hey, man, you're going to play 20 minutes, but your only job is to run corner to corner. You don't even have to guard your guy. Just like make 6 threes 2 times in this playoff run.
That's kind of the thing, though, that makes Melo's career frustrating because when it was kind of time to move into that second act, basically, where you were more of a supporting guy, that's where he had problems. OKC, Houston.
I mean, he was out of the league.
Yeah, exactly. He was out of the league because people didn't think he was going to accept a role.
Yeah.
People can say it was politics or any of this other BS, but, like, look, if they think a guy could truly help you, they're going to sign him.
Like, hey, Chris Paul's in the league still.
Yeah, exactly. So Melo, the second half of his career kind of makes it a bit more complicated. But I still think Hall of Famer, completely agree, first ballot. I'll even co-sign that. Moving on to our next guy, we got Dwight Howard.
Easy, yes. It's kind of insane. Also first ballot. He was 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Consecutively.
In a row. I was going to say in a row.
8 All-Star teams. 5-time first team All-NBA. 5-time All-Defense. Not all those were first team. He had some second teams in there, but like 8-time overall All-NBA. And he kind of has that weird qualifier for players that aren't in that top tier, and he made it to the finals as the best player. And it's really hard to it's hard to leave those guys out of Hall of Fame discussions where it's like, hey, this guy won or got to the finals as the best player. I mean, this guy actually won the title, I'm about to say, but even a guy like a Bill Walton kind of lives off of similar criteria where it's like, well, he won the title as the best guy. So it's hard to leave him out. Same with Dwight. Not saying that Dwight's even on this. I don't know. I'll leave that for a later conversation. But career, he was 16-12, which is crazy, including the years where he was like barely playing and doing weird stuff. Yeah. Other criteria, he's just over 19,000 points, just over 14,000 rebounds, 2008 gold medalist, of course. His best regular season was that 10-11 season just before he moved to the Lakers. Sort of just in that time where he's like demanding a trade, then not demanding a trade, and then demanding a trade again. He was 23-14. And in the 09 playoffs, in the whole playoff run, he was 20-15 and lost in the finals. Now, I've been collecting all these tapes and trying to throw them into the Hudson River. Apparently, he beat LeBron in that Eastern Conference Finals. I don't remember it. I haven't really seen a lot of evidence of it, but apparently that happened. But yeah, he beat LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals, which you can say what you want about LeBron's team or whatever, which I would do. But I mean, that's a legit. It's not like he was playing with the '86 Celtics, or anything like that. So, and he took it to 6. He took the finals, or was it 5 or 6 in the finals?
Against the Lakers, that went to 6.
It's 6, yeah, 6 in the finals, and they were legitimate, like one bounce here, one bounce there plays that could have either taken it to 7, or they even had a legitimate shot to win it, which people don't remember, which is crazy. But I don't think there's really much debate. Dwight Howard was the best center in the league, probably for a good 6-7 year run, and that's too long of a run with that sort of criteria to not be a first ballot guy. Even though he had ugly as shit game.
Yeah, aesthetically, he doesn't win any awards. Not at all. Not at all. Pretty simple. Completely agree. First 14 years of his career, he was a double-double every season. Like, usually those guys are pretty okay. And I don't want to just base it down to stats, but if that's your starting point, that's a pretty good starting point. As you said, I mean, he was kind of the last of the centers, kind of, for a period of time, of the traditional old school type of center.
Either just post up or roll to the basket and get a oop, and that's kind of and rebound, and that's all you're doing.
Yeah, and he was valued. I mean, like, there were, he finished second in MVP one year, like, was top 5 candidate multiple years. So, like, as you said, not only was he, like, the best center in the league for 6-7 years, like, there was a case, I'm sure, where outside of Bron, he was, like, the second or third best player in the entire NBA for a period of time. Outside of probably Bron and
Kobe, yeah.
So,
and Mo Williams.
Yeah, I can't forget Mo's one All-Star appearance on his resume. Next guy we're going to bring up, so we're 2 for 2 so far. Both of those two guys obvious. Now we're going to start moving into maybe the less obvious category. Amar'e Stoudemire, probably one of my favorite players. I would argue just one of my favorite players of all time. Like really. He was a game changer in the pick and roll. I argued with someone the other day, I think he's the most dynamic roll man in NBA history. Like, just his elevation, his explosiveness and athleticism, and then his ability to, like, face up from 12 to 18 and just knock down that jumper consistently. I mean, there's no coincidence that him and Nash pick and roll for 7 years.
I'm going to say yes, he's in, and I'm going to say not as a first ballot guy, though. But I think when you get into the 5-time All-NBA, it kind of gets difficult. I mean, he was only first team once. But why don't you remind the people of some of the power forwards that were in the league at the time, same time as him?
There was a guy named Tim Duncan.
I heard he's pretty good.
He's all right. Turns out he's okay. A guy named Dirk Nowitzki. He's pretty all right.
I think he was all right, yeah.
Kevin Garnett, you might have heard of him before.
Okay, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah. Won an MVP.
Yeah.
All those guys. Well, no, Tim Duncan didn't win MVP. He just decided to win 5 rings instead.
No. You got it wrong. Tim didn't decide to win an MVP. He decided to win 2 of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that Dirk, like you said, he doesn't have an MVP, or he does have.
Does have an MVP. Yep.
Yeah. So all 3 of those.
KG MVP and title. So yeah, he was. I mean, and if you want to get technical about it, he probably was in the same league at the same time as Karl Malone for about a half a season. So if you want to count that,
02, 03 years.
That's what I mean. So
even C-Web,
Yep.
kind of
C-Web.
Post prime, was kind of right.
And so when you're considered one of the 3 best of those guys at any time in the league, even if you're getting second or third team All-NBAs, and you're getting a first team in there as well, I mean, it's kind of hard to leave him out. Also won Rookie of the Year. I don't know really, if that matters that much, but just wanted to point that out. 6-time All-Star, which again, like Chad said, guys are getting in that are like 2-time All-Stars and stuff like that. Most of the time, those guys get in because of their team success. It's like they played a decent role in like winning teams. Amar'e got to the Western Conference Finals and once, and that was kind of his peak of his playoff career. So that 04-05 season, he was 26-9. They were the 1 seed in the entire playoffs. They were 62-20, and then lost in the Western Conference Finals in 05 to, of course, Tim Duncan. And then in 10-11.
Just real quick, just to stay on that 04-05. I mean, he's 22 that year, playing center in the playoffs. He's 30-11. 30-11, getting to the line like 12 times a game.
Yeah, so that was just crazy. And then 10-11. Is that when he's in New York? Is that right when he gets to New York? Or is that the last?
10-11 is his first year, because remember, he's part of that big summer of 2010 free agency.
Yep. With LeBron, so LeBron's in that class, Bosh is in that class, Amari's in that class. Carmelo got traded.
Yep.
And so
Carmelo got traded. Wade's in that
technically, even though he re-signed, yeah.
Boozer's part of
Yep.
Group.
So big summer but he went 25-8 and was playing. I think he was the first player since Wilt to play over 48 minutes a game, which was interesting. No, but he was playing like a shit ton of minutes, and that's kind of what was the beginning of the end of his career. But even in that season, he got swept as a six seed, which I just put LOL next to in my notes. So I think Amari was too good for a long enough time for you to leave out, but I don't think he'll be a guy that's like everyone's like, oh yeah, Amari for sure, definitely 100% this time.
Yeah. Completely agree. We're on the same wavelength, and you kind of hit the nail on the head where it's like the power forwards in the league at the time were just so good.
The fact he's able to rise into that class,
Yeah,
and I don't think people would put him in that class. Like I think if you were to say, hey, who are the 5 best power forwards of the 2000s, he would probably be named 6th or 7th. But I mean, if you really look at it, he might be closer to like above C-Web. Which I'm not ready. I'm not ready to make that argument because I haven't done the research on it. But like, if you do it, then it might be a bigger conversation.
I think there would be a fascinating, and I'm not ready to do it right now because I don't have all the research in front of me. There'd be a fascinating Amari versus Blake conversation.
Yeah,
kind of.
He's going to be a similar case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I looked at it just off the top. Blake, same thing. 6 All-Stars, 5 All-NBA appearances.
Yeah, Rookie of the Year.
Clearly, they're on to something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Explosive pick and roll guy. So very similar. All right, moving on. Next guy we've got. This is where it kind of starts to get into the 50% or less.
Is this a new guy?
Yeah.
Because there's one more new candidate that I'm excited to talk about.
Would that be Mr. Marc Gasol?
It is. And this is going to blow people's minds what I'm about to say. But he's in. And I almost think it's like a guarantee, and he might be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
All right, make the case, because I was a little anti-Gasol doing the research.
Okay, I'll give you the case by saying, I'll start it off by saying 3 names, okay?
Okay.
And they all played on the same international team. Dino Raja, Vlade Divac, and Drazen Petrovic are all in the Hall of Fame. Vlade Divac, if you just had to guess, okay, what his career points per game is, what would you say? Points and rebounds. What do you think his career averages are?
I'd say he's 12-8, maybe.
12-8. That's exactly what he is. Good guess. I'm sure it was more of an educated guess, but
I promise I don't have it up. I swear.
Dino Raja played 224 games in the NBA. Now he was 17-8, but yes, didn't even win a title in that time, so you can't even pull that. And then Drazen Petrovic, who unfortunately died. I think he's probably more of a would have, but I mean, in the time he was actually in the NBA, 290 games, and he was 15-2-2, I guess. He had the what's the guy? The Allen Houston All-Stars. He was the main character of that. He only played 4 seasons in the league. And so when I look at Marc Gasol's resume, 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, was Defensive Player of the Year. That weird thing where he won Defensive Player of the Year, but then wasn't first-team All-NBA. But he was Defensive Player of the Year regardless. Career 14-7, which again, those numbers don't pop, but when you factor in the international, his best season in 16-17, he was 19.5 and 6.5 in the regular season. He did lose in the first round, but very famously, the 2 playoff runs that he had in the 2013 playoffs, he was 17 and then 8.5, and they got to the Western Conference Finals. They did get swept by the Spurs, but I mean, I don't think people are going to give him crap for getting swept by the Spurs when their third best player in that playoff was Pondexter. Was Quincy Pondexter. And then, of course, and this is probably what, in my mind, now doing the research, sealed it, was the 2019 playoffs winning a title, being the starting center. Didn't even average 10 points. He was 9-6. He played 30 minutes a game for a title team that beat the Warriors. The Warriors were banged up, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. When there's 30 years down the line, we're talking about teams that won the title. No one's going to bring up Kevin Love and Kyrie not playing the 2015 finals. People aren't going to bring up that 2 of the big 4, I guess, technically, got hurt for the Warriors. They're going to say, did this guy win a title? Yes, he did. He won a title as a starting player and like a legit contributor, not just he was out there running back and forth for 10 minutes a game.
30 minutes, definitely an essential guy for them. I thought was really good in the finals, actually.
Yes, and so when you factor all those things together, that makes like a weird case. But then when you add the international on top of it, I think it kind of becomes an insurmountable case that I think he's going to get in.
Yeah, and when you said the perfect thing, when you throw in the international case and all that, then it's definitely going to happen. Personally, I just don't feel like, again, this is where it's kind of that, what are we arguing about? Are we arguing
who's getting in or who should be in?
Yeah, and are we arguing Basketball Hall of Fame? Or are we arguing NBA? Like, what's that? Because never in my mind, like, I know he had that nice run where, you know, he had a 4-year stretch really where he was kind of in that all-star, you know, third-team All-NBA type of range.
Even like the who's the best center in the league type of conversations. He wasn't winning those, but his name was getting brought up. Yeah.
Yeah, his name definitely had to get brought up. But just for me, and granted, offensively, his game was actually a lot better than I remember. I was watching, funnily enough, but I was just watching a random highlight clip of him that was a good 4 minutes long, just him going to work on the low block, and I think he was much more skilled as a scorer than I remember in the low to mid post. But at the same time, he just wasn't. You know, Randolph was probably more of the fulcrum offensively of that group.
Yep.
Gasol was the defensive anchor, and kind of the combination of those 2 guys together is what really made that team special at the time. So I like Gasol, but at the same time, like, to me, I feel like if it's a tie, then the tie should be no. For me, like if I'm saying I could see him or not see him, then to me that means no. But as you said, when you bring in that factor in the international part, I think Gasol is probably going to get it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's fair. Like I don't know if I agree with it. Like the whole premise of it. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, those other guys that you mentioned, and other international guys as well with lesser resumes in the NBA that also got in. I feel like, you know, is going to help Gasol's case significantly, especially, you know, not only was he you know, we talk about him internationally, like it's not like he was a guy who played for the U.S. and just, you know, averaged 12 minutes a game as they were beating people by 30. Like, he had a legitimate role on the international scene where it was like Spain was the only team that anyone could even see competing.
It's like, man, they got the Gasols, so they can of course they can win.
Yeah. From like 2007 to like 2015, that was like the only team that could even come close to even staying on the court with the U.S. So
my personal favorite was when they added Ibaka.
Yeah, that was a bit. I think that was early transfer portal. They might have gotten him. They gave him an NIL deal at one time.
Funnier international player, Ibaka on Spain or Embiid on the U.S.? There's got to be Embiid on the U.S. because we somehow sneaky needed him to win the semifinal.
I still got to go Andre Blatch on the Philippines over both of them.
This dude's dropping like 30 a game for them too in like Olympic qualifier.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, because Blatch went on the team and immediately became the star player.
I love it. All right, so just for the record for the people, those are the people that I did all my research on, and I focused on the new inductees. These other people that Chad are about to say are just really a feeling, and So yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what he's gonna say.
And these ones I really want to go through pretty quickly because I don't think we have to spend, like you said, they're just more feel. And these other guys that we're mentioning aren't even first time, ballot people either. So, but Penny Hardaway, 4 All-Star games, 3 All-NBAs, career 15, 4, and 5, kind of in that Rose category of like, yes, had a really strong peak, but then ended up just kind of tailing off due to injuries and all that. So, do you have a strong opinion one way or the other?
I think he will get in, but I don't think I agree with it. His work as the Memphis head coach, I'm kind of out on. So if we're talking basketball Hall of Fame, I'm just kidding. No, but in all seriousness, I just don't. I mean, he had that run to the finals in 1995 where he was really good, and if you talk to anyone who played in the 90s, he was like the greatest guard to ever grace the earth. But that was a lot, like Chad said, based on his peak. And since I hold Rose to that standard of I don't think he should probably get in because of his lack of longevity, I think I'm going to hold that against Anthony Hardaway as well.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm saying no to Penny as well. Kind of like you said, I just don't think long enough peak career. Next guy is going to be Sean Marion, aka Tricks. One-time champion, 4 All-Stars, 2 third-team All-NBAs. Actually, was a career of 15 and 9.
So this one,
I'm saying no. I just feel like he was too much in that third man role. Like if you're the second guy, I can kind of see it a bit more. Especially because when you really look at it, they didn't have that team success even in Phoenix that like that a legitimate third guy would get if he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
like kind of the Dennis Rodman corollary, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, Dennis Rodman, Draymond, kind of that role, but his team just didn't have nearly the success as either of those other two guys.
The only thing that kind of throws me off with him is the third team, is the All NBAs, and then how highly he consistently ranked in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation.
Oh yeah,
he kind of plays in a weird position where it's kind of hard to get Defensive Player of the Year because that's kind of the more flashy defensive players. I guess are kind of those small forward type of guys where it's like, oh, I saw him defend Shaq one time and he did really well on him, but I also saw him defend Chris Paul one time and he did good on him. Since they're kind of in that versatile type defensive position, it's kind of hard for some guys to get in. Career 15 and 9. Like those are pretty legit numbers, including years where he's playing in like Cleveland.
12 years. Yeah.
Let's say.
Yeah, I mean his peak, he's like a 20 and 12 guy with like 2 blocks and a steal.
Yeah, his probably best season in 05-06, he's 22-12. He's got 2 steals, about 2 blocks. I mean, he's shooting over 52% from the field. He got MVP votes 2 years. I'm gonna say yes. He got 2 years of MVP votes. Just like he kind of falls into that camp of where it's just like he was just a good NBA player for 15 years, and sometimes that's enough to get in.
Fair. I'm not mad, but I just.
I'm not married to it. I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to die on the hill that Tricks needs to get in, but it's just like when I'm looking at his resume, even compared to like a guy like a Penny Hardaway, like it's like.
No, definitely more complete.
Yes.
Definitely more complete. And the fact that he was, kind of like what you were saying about Gasol, where he's actually a contributor on that Dallas team.
Yep.
He's playing 33 minutes a game and was like a full-time starter for them. So, obviously it's not like we're saying he's the closeout guy at the end of a game.
Yeah.
He's certainly someone who played a huge role.
That's him shooting a jumper, by the way, for the viewers.
Real quick, I just want to wrap up with a couple of coaches. I had Robert Horry's name down, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
No.
There's just
no All-Stars.
No argument. He's a career 7 and 5.
That's good.
I refuse to believe that that's ever a Hall of Famer. I don't care. You could win 100 rings.
And he's also not one of those guys that's like a perennial 6 Man of the Year guy or like a most improved guy. Like he's not winning any of those weird awards either. He's just like a guy that's hit. Albeit a lot compared to any other player in the league, probably, but a lot of very important shots, which doesn't make a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, his name is definitely a part of NBA history, weirdly, but at the same time, it's not in the Hall of Fame.
Could he go in as like a contributor? Like, I'm kind of joking, but like also like because of what you just said, like it's like, is he one of the, I don't know how many players in the Hall of Fame is he, but does he just deserve to be in the same room as LeBron and MJ and Shaquille O'Neal and Kareem and stuff like that? No. But like you said, when you're telling the story of the NBA to your grandkids, you're going to have to say his name a couple of times, a decent amount of times. So if you're writing the book of the NBA, the 10,000 page book of the NBA, if you hit Control F on it, if you have a PDF file of it, his name comes up like 10 times. And so it's like, I feel like this guy should be honored in some sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not a bad call, honestly. I laughed at first, but now I'm kind of... To me, it would make more sense for him to get in that role than obviously as a player. So
yeah, because contributor is basically like, hey man, I invented the inbound pass. Like I invented the stack play, so I'm in. Yeah, stuff like that. So Chad's got two coaches. I'm going to tee him up just because I don't want to give my own opinion because I don't feel qualified enough. But the first one being Papa Doc Rivers. What are your thoughts on him? And also, I mean, this could be another guy where it's like, what does he go in as? He's definitely not going in as a player, but would he go in as a coach or overall contributor to the game? Because when this is another guy, it's like, well, he was a decent player in the league for some pretty big teams, and now he's a coach who's won a title and has lost every other important game in his career.
Yeah, and was actually, a really good announcer as well.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. Like, he kind of has the big three. Well, I guess the big three would probably be more like if he was a GM as well. But yeah, he kind of has three main roles that are kind of central to growing the game and being part of the NBA ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think Doc, and I mean, for whatever reason, I just think he's very well liked as well. Like, people in the media and stuff just love Doc for whatever reason. I think it's because he treats stars really well, has a history of treating stars well, so the stars kind of talk him up. And he
treated Paul Pierce well.
Yeah. Yeah, so then people just, like, go with whatever they say, and they're like, all right, like, we'll just go with that.
Yeah.
But Doc's had too much up and down, I think, for me to consider him a Hall of Famer. Because, I feel like one of the most underrated things with the NBA is consistency.
Yep.
And that's what makes someone great. Like we talked about, Derrick Rose, you got this flash in the pan, and granted, his is different than maybe some other guys who had a couple.
He didn't just shit it away. He actually got hurt.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. There are real reasons, and you can argue there are reasons behind all of these guys. That's what makes it hard to then have the consistency, because there's always reasons to not have it.
Yep.
And with Doc, I just don't feel like he ever put together, outside of, yes, that 3-year run where he assembled the big three in Boston, where they went title. Then I think they lost in the second round because KG was injured, and then they made
and finals loss. Yep.
In 10. Yes, that's a good run, but at the same time, I don't think that 3-year run should kind of overshadow the fact that he's blown some massive series as a favorite.
Little asterisk, he also made the conference finals in 12, so.
Yeah, exactly. They were close to actually winning that series against Miami when they had no business really competing, because that was Pierce and KG on their last.
So he's just a tale of like overachieving and underachieving throughout his career. Yeah. So it's like too much of a balance. The only I guess I would just make it. I guess I would call it the Bob Horry argument, where it's just like kind of what I was talking about before, where it's like when you have a ring as a coach, when you've made an all-star as a player, and you were in the league. It wasn't like you were in the league for 5 seconds and you just so happened to make an all-star team. Like, he was legitimately in the league for like a 12-year run. Then he's been he was an announcer for a long time, and now he's been a coach. And even when he's not coaching, like the years that he's not coaching, he's been in the media spotlight in other ways, contributing and announcing. And so I would just find it hard to not have him in as, again, a contributor, but definitely not as a player, not as a coach.
You don't want him at the 1. You don't want him at the 2.
I don't think he gets in as an announcer. I don't think he gets in as a coach. I don't think he gets in as a player. But I think overall what he's done for the game. I mean, I don't know how old he is, but I'm sure for the past so he's 63. So for the past 40 years of his life, he's been directly contributing to the NBA in some way. Even contributed as another NBA player to the league. And it can't be forgotten, NBA Cup champion. So I mean, make of that what you will.
That's fair.
No, we have to let him in now, actually, because I'm going to make the argument in 10 years that's LeBron's 5th ring.
Oh yeah. What do you mean in 10 years? I'm gonna do it in 10 years. Last guy, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the episode. Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan, I know you're saying, what the hell? The Chicago Bulls and Oklahoma City Thunder coach? He hasn't made it out of the second round. How the hell? This is why we say Basketball Hall of Fame. Because when you look at his college resume is, there's no argument against it.
20 years at Florida.
Yeah, 20 years, 2 back-to-back titles, 06, 07, makes 4 Final Fours, makes the championship game 3 times, 6 times won the SEC regular season, 4 times SEC tournament champ. Kind of put Florida, I mean, to me, I would say put Florida on the map as a basketball school. They haven't been anything since him. Okay, go ahead. You got a point?
Does the back-to-back national championship diminish it in the sense that it's like, hey, he only had success with this group of guys and he wasn't able to find that same success outside of it?
The only reason I'm going to say no is because he does still have at least the Final Four in 2000 and another one in, I don't remember what year the fourth
14.
He has 4. Yeah, so he has a Final Four run with 3 really different groups. So I think that's kind of the thing that saves it. But no, it is a fair argument to say, hey, he really just kind of peaked with this group last season.
And the best player on his team when he made it the last time was a guy by the name of Dorian Finney-Smith. So, I mean, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this dude might be the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah, but no, I'm pro Billy Donovan. I think Billy Donovan is a Hall of Famer. So again, that's 100% on the college side. NBA. I mean, I don't think he's a horrible NBA coach, but he's like fine, regular run of the mill.
I don't think he's a horrible guy. Okay.
Yeah, I know that's a hell of an endorsement for a Hall of Famer. But that's, as we just kind of talked about, that's the thing about the Hall of Fame. It's more ice skating than it is analytical. So. Yep.
Yeah. So, man, we haven't had one of these really long episodes in a while. I'm excited that we did, though. I thought we covered some really nice stuff. I really like those topics. But you guys are really what matters. What did you guys think? Do you guys like the topics? Do you guys like it when we talk NBA? I know we tend to do best when we do Premier League. I think it's something that we're both very knowledgeable about. But we're kind of getting that point in the year where football is going to really kick into high gear, with playoffs and stuff like that. Quick little complaint. Brandon Aubrey is actually going to be my downfall in fantasy. This dude put up like a 21 ball or something like that last night. And so now I'm relying on Josh Jacobs. He has to score 6 or 6. He has to outscore the Green Bay defense by 6 or less. So if the Green Bay defense gets 6, he has to get no more than 12 for me to move on to the next round of the playoffs, which I'm not feeling amazing about. But Josh Allen screwed me and got 11 last night, so I'm really clinging on.
The Saints have a guy making his first start of his career, so that could help the Green Bay defense.
That's the only thing that I'm excited about, but also it kind of scares me because it's kind of running back and defense kind of go hand in hand, where it's like if your defense is playing their ass off, it means you're probably winning and you're probably trying to run out the clock. So, but, there's kind of a long history of like running backs that I see got like 125 yards, but actually only put up those 12 points because they didn't catch a pass or score a touchdown. So I'm hoping for that kind of a game where it's like Josh Jacobs has like 108 yards, but only comes away with 10.8 points, and then the Packers defense holds them to 8 points, or holds them to 10 points, and then picks them off 3 times, including pick 6. So.
Yeah, not much to ask for.
Not much at all. But thank you guys so much again for episode 19 of the Glue Guys podcast. Episode 20 coming up just before the new year, hopefully. Until then, I'll see you guys later. See ya.